had promised them, ooh, that came on. I, as a parent, had promised them that if they scored a passing grade, they could get a new video game. Now, the child would be understandably upset. They might feel bad, they might feel guilty, but they'd probably just deal with it, deal with the bad grade. But what if the child's teacher said, you can change your grade to whatever you want it to be? What grade do you think that child would give themselves with a video game on the line? Mr. Carr, start with you.
Boy, I don't know in that case. To speculate on what the child might say, I really don't know. I think at some level, you're trying to suggest that he would grade himself very high.
Yeah, I think that's usually right. Having been a professor, that's usually been my experience. Any of the rest of you want to guess what would happen? If you could give yourself a grade, what grade would you give yourself on your performance today? I think most people would give themselves an A. That was always my experience as a professor when I let my students grade themselves. So in changing your grade by yourself, not from your teacher, you're basically not getting an actual reflection, an accurate reflection of what really happened. So I want to be clear about why, given this example, project applicants should not be allowed to essentially grade themselves, to basically get around and manipulate our federal laws that have protected our environmental and human health for decades. This bill does that. It allows natural gas, oil, mineral extraction, coal, even wind companies for that matter, to have unilateral authority to prepare their own environmental review on their own without any legitimate oversight. Now, Mr. Carr, in your testimony, you listed promoting, and this is a quote, promoting greater applicant involvement in the NEPA process as a key area for NEPA modernization. On page 13 of the Builder Act, there's a section titled Sponsor Preparation. Are you aware of that section?
I don't have it immediately in front of me, no.
So you're unable to tell us whether you agree with that section, sponsor preparation?
In terms of sponsor preparation, my general understanding of the intent is that it would be engagement between the applicant and the interested parties, stakeholders, and it's a broad outreach process. That is my understanding.
So the provision, as I understand it, says that the lead agency will independently evaluate the environmental document of the proposed project. And you cite this need in your testimony. Do you really think a federal agency will conduct sufficient oversight over a project that decides to do its own environmental review?
Was that question to me? I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Could you ask the question one more time?
Do you really think a federal agency will do sufficient oversight over a project that decides to undergo its own environmental review process?
I believe that is the intent of what we're trying to accomplish here.
I believe that's the intent, but do you think it will happen?
I do.
You do. Let me give you an example of why I'm concerned. In 2015, the Penn East Pipeline Company filed an application with FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, for the Penn East Pipeline project, which is a natural gas project. During the environmental review process, Penn East failed to disclose to FERC multiple times, and they provided missing data, including a list of alternative routes to avoid wells that supplied local drinking water, and the destruction of state-protected farmland, a wetlands and watershed survey, and a sufficient arsenic study. Despite these missing materials that are required under NEPA, FERC approved Penn East's environmental impact statement. So let me ask you again, Mr. Carr, are you really confident that federal lead agencies will conduct sufficient oversight of future environmental reviews?
So certainly in the case of Darylyn Power, again, one of the interesting aspects is we are governed as well by the communities, the members, and the consumers we serve. They are the governance body, they are the communities, they are the stakeholders. They are on both sides of the aisle. They are involved in the process all the way along. I am confident that as we stand today, as we're seeing two projects that would actually reduce the environmental impact, the greenhouse gas impacts, that the process is blocking it. I think the time for reform is now.
So you're not worried, and I appreciate your indulgence. I just want to say I'm concerned that this process, this reform, would basically let the foxes run amok in an already porous, shall we say, chicken coop. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back, and I don't mind granting her extra time for making the trek back over to fill in for Mr. Grijalva. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes, and I want to thank the witnesses sincerely again for your testimony. And now the gentlelady from California had me thinking. Actually, when I was in elementary and middle school and even high school, the teacher did let us grade our work sometimes.